was the perfect storm. I was overdosing like constantly. I was terrible at shooting dope, and I was in a place where I was miserable enough to where I wanted help, but my disease wouldn't allow me to ask for help. And even when they intervened on me, like I knew I wanted help, but I still fought them and was like, I don't need help. I don't need help. Like I got this. But my aunt read me a letter that my little cousins, who I adore completely, they were worried about me, and they were now including me in their prayers. When I heard that those little girls were worried about me and they were including me in their prayers, I had a split second where my self-centeredness subsided, and I was able to see how my actions were like actually affecting these people. It's hard for me to recover, right? Obviously, I've been trying that my whole life and it didn't work. I needed some spiritual component. And if you don't, hey, hats off, power to you. But most of the people that I've witnessed that have forced themselves to quit using drugs or alcohol, but haven't at least added some sort of spiritual component, they're pretty miserable people. They might not be using drugs or alcohol, which is great, at least you're alive, but I didn't get sober just to be alive. I got sober to develop a life worth living, right? And to begin to experience some freedom. And that's what happened, man.
What's going on, guys? How y'all doing today? This podcast is brought to you by Synergy. We're here to talk about recovery. We're here to talk about treatment. We're here to talk about the importance of mental health and what a community could do for you. Matt, go ahead and share some things.
Topic of discussion, recovery. Where do we begin?
Let's talk about your journey.
Okay. I think I was destined to become an addict. For as long as I can remember, I struggled with an internal condition that I now refer to as the spiritual malady. In my skin, I felt irritable, restless, discontent. I remember being a little kid and constantly complaining that I was bored. Like, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. And no matter what sort of activity I was participating in, I was bored. I couldn't sit with myself. And, I had anger problems, rage problems, but I didn't have anything to treat this internal condition. My mom would try to place me in therapy, and I wasn't in a place where I was able to receive what they were saying. I remember that people would say, like, I understand what you're going through. And I was like, no, you don't understand shit. There's no way. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know my life. And I mean, this is when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And then I recall being on a trip with my dad to Amsterdam, and I was in this arcade. I don't know if you know those games where you like stick the coin in the machine and there's like a little thing moving and you try to put it behind the other coins and it pushes coins down.
Okay.
And there's like prizes in there, right? So one of them was a Zippo lighter. So I won and the Zippo lighter fell out, and on it had a cannabis leaf.
Wow.
And I asked my dad, what is this? What's this leaf? And he explained the concept of weed to me. And I was probably, again, like nine years old, something like that. And I remember thinking, I'm too young to smoke weed right now, but someday I'm going to smoke weed.
Right.
And sure enough, as the years went on, I went through some traumatic events. For the sake of time, I won't get into all of that, but I am an open book. And in, I think it was 6th, 7th grade, the first opportunity to smoke weed came up. People started having weed a little bit, and there was no hesitation in me. I was like, all right, it's time.
Right.
I didn't have any intention of becoming an addict, right? I was just like, all right, I'm going to smoke weed. This sounds like a fun activity. No peer pressure. It wasn't about peer pressure for me. I was totally open and interested and eager to do it. So I smoked weed. I didn't really feel it the first time, but then the second time I did it, I remember experiencing total freedom. Like all of my problems, or what I thought were problems at the time, seemed to disappear.
Right.
It was the best I had ever felt in my entire life. And I knew that was it. That was it for me. Still, I wasn't an addict. I was a kid smoking weed.
At this point, you were how old?
I was like 12, about 12 years old.
Okay.
And so it started off like I would look forward all week to the weekend. And on the weekend, I would smoke weed with my friends, right? You were there for some of that.
Guilty.
And it wasn't progressing very fast at first. I mean, my like criminal behavior was progressing. I started getting into the whole like thug stage character, because when we were growing up, it was like we were listening to like 50 Cent, Eminem, and Lil Wayne,
right.
and that was like the cool thing. I remember immediately getting hooked on like Echo and Fubu and Fat Farm and Iceberg and
Sean
John, yeah, all of that, and like falling in love with that stage character, that lifestyle. hanging out with older friends teaching me how to rap and how to sell weed and how to roll blunts properly and how to dress, and I was just all in. I was all in, but I still wasn't an addict, right? I was just embracing this lifestyle and going a little too far into it. But then ninth grade, by the middle of ninth grade, I had been arrested a few times, and as much as I thought I was tough shit, I was told that I was going to go to juvie until I was 18 years old, and that scared the shit out of me. My PO was like, "Yeah, you got 3 strikes. You're going to juvie until you're 18." And I went to visit my mom's side of the family in Texas and came up with this grand idea that I was going to stay in Texas, start my life over, and I was going to do well now. And throughout this whole time, I always said, I'll smoke weed, but I'm never going to do anything harder than weed. I'm not like a drug guy, right? Just smoke weed. And I was drinking a little bit, like partying on the weekends, but what ended up happening, first I heard about ecstasy and I was like, well, that sounds like a fun like experience, like a party. Drug doesn't sound gross like meth or heroin, like some dark shit, right? So I tried ecstasy. It was amazing, but still I wasn't like I'm going to keep doing this all the time. But to cut to the chase, I got robbed in Arlington, Texas. Again, I thought I was tough shit growing up in Beverly Hills. I get to Arlington, it's like gutter as ugh, and I pulled out
That's the
$80.
thing. That's the thing with your jaw, right?
Yeah, I had my
Okay.
jaw wired shut. Exactly. You know, for the sake of time, what ended up happening is I got my jaw broken. I got my jaw wired shut. They prescribed me hydrocodone.
You want to tell them what happened, how that happened?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell them how it happened.
Only because I feel like it was your life choices that led you to that point. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So your testimony will kind of maybe help others
I mean, it all goes
veer
hand in
away.
hand. It
Right.
all goes hand in hand, right? The lifestyle and also the like identity crisis, like trying to be somebody that I wasn't, you know? I was this little Beverly Hills kid, you know, like Jewish kid, raised well aside from like the family being split up and like some traumatic stuff happening in the home setting, but good parents, ultimately good parents, but I fell in love with this lifestyle. I found something that I thought was keeping me safe. It was a form of protecting myself.
Right.
Because really, I was like this sweet, sensitive kid, but I needed to act tough and be surrounded by tough people as like a defense mechanism because I didn't feel safe ultimately. I didn't feel safe. So what happened? I went to buy some weed in some like ghetto apartment complex. It's like the projects, you know, in
Mm-hmm.
Arlington though. And I pulled out $80. I remember I was trying to buy like stress, you know, swag. It was shitty weed in Arlington, and I was trying to buy 4 pre-rolled blunts for $20. It was $5 a blunt.
Sheesh.
And I pulled out $80 thinking that's not like a lot of money to me. That's all I had. And I gave the guy a 20 and he's like, I only have 3 blunts. So he gave me $5 back and 3 blunts. And I start walking away with my 3 blunts and my $65 change. And the neighborhood, like you've seen Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Debo?
Yeah.
This guy was Popeye, but he was like the Debo of the neighborhood. He wasn't the dealer. He was just at the dealer's house. And
Right. Right.
he comes out and he's like, "Hey, yo, Matt, I got that fourth blunt for you, homie. Come here." And me, clueless in La La Land, never been robbed, never been beat up, you know.
Popeye came out with that spinach, huh?
He came out with that spinach. Yeah, that used to be the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I walked with him over to the cut and I'm talking to my buddy who I was with, looking at my buddy, and bow, I just get stole. And he gets me on the ground and just doesn't stop hitting me until he breaks both sides of my jaw. And I still remember I was wearing this G Unit thermal and fresh J's. I was wearing some Jordans, and I just remember standing up. He took the $65 and ran. And I stood up, and there's just blood dripping down my thermal onto my
Damn.
J's. And I was like, "There's nothing I can do in this moment, you know." So
Right.
I just walked away, and my friends that were waiting for us were all heated, like, what happened to you, you know?" And I told them, and they were pissed at my buddy that didn't do anything. He was covering his eyes. He was scared.
Right.
And I went and smoked those 3 pre-rolled blunts, and my jaw swelled up like a baseball was in it. And I went to this girl's house, and her mom screamed when she saw my face and made me call my mom and go to the hospital. And I ended up getting my jaw wire shut.
Yeah.
And that would be the beginning of like me going downhill quick because I was so embarrassed, you know. Like I said, I thought I was this tough guy, this stage character, and now my jaw's wired shut, and I gotta talk like this.
Right.
And I'm embarrassed to go back to school. I'm embarrassed of what people are gonna think. And so I start ditching school and staying home and just smoking weed all day. And the doctors prescribed me hydrocodone, and I manipulated them and told them it wasn't strong enough. So they upped me to Demerol, it's like morphine. And yeah, I I mean, again, I still don't think I was like in full blown addiction, but I was like in the darkness. I was like in the
Right.
darkness. I was starting to isolate. I was starting not to give a shit. And my mom was concerned that I was going down the wrong path. So the day I get my jaw wired, I go to sleep that night and I wake up. Let's see. I wake up at like 3 in the morning and there's two transporters next to my bed,
Program.
the program.
I was there.
And here's what's crazy. Get this. It's funny we're having this
Yeah.
conversation right now. For the viewers, if you've been paying attention on Netflix, they just came out with a show called The Program, Cult something and something, whatever. But it is specifically about the program that I got sent to, Academy at Ivy Ridge.
You were in New York, right?
Yeah, upstate New York.
I was in Louisiana
Yeah.
and Nevada.
What was the name of your program?
Um, I Red River was the one in Louisiana. We were over there by the bayous.
Hmm.
It was kind of weird because
Red River, was it part of the Wasp company or something like
I'm not
that?
sure, but it was like a more the owners were Mormon. I remember that. I think his name was like Mr. Dusky or something like that.
I feel like it could have been part of the same organization. It was like the biggest one of those corrupt behavior mod They had
Yeah,
one in Jamaica,
yeah,
Tranquility Bay,
yeah.
and
That's
then
where they would
one in
send you.
Mexico, Casa by the Sea. Yeah, if you got in more trouble, they would say, "We're going to send you to Jamaica."
Jamaica.
Oh, bro, it's the same company. Yeah, that's wild. That's
I remember
wild.
that.
So I was at Academy at Ivy Ridge.
Can I be real with you?
Yeah.
I got kicked out of the Nevada program because of what you told me.
What do you mean?
You basically told me something about somebody had brought a lighter into the facility, and you remember that story?
Um, was it lighting the mattress on
Yes,
fire?
sir.
Oh, that's what took place in the riot. Yeah.
So yeah, I got shipped over to Nevada from Nevada to Louisiana because I took that same approach.
Oh, wow.
And I remember what you told me, and something happened to in the facilities over there, and
You never told me that. That's
yeah,
wild.
I ended up I didn't get out till I was like 18, bro. Yeah, that's why I was gone all these time. But go ahead, man.
Those places, man, those places are crazy. Anyways, I get sent to that place, and again, now I'm this little kid that grew up in Beverly Hills and part of my life in Arlington, Texas. Now I moved back to Arlington, and now I'm sent to upstate New York with like a whole different energy, culture, different types of people. I think I was like the second to the youngest person at this facility. Scared shitless. Right when I walk in, I got there like when it was shut down, it was time to go to sleep, and they take me into the hallway, and there's 100 people hanging out of their rooms like fresh meat, fresh meat, fresh meat. And I was like, oh shit, what is this? And they put me on a mattress on the ground in this. They didn't have a bed ready for me, so they put a mattress on the floor in this room with these two other guys. And I remember one of them said he was a Crip, and the other one was like a rapper. I don't know if that was true or what, but they start going through my bag like, "What'd your mama pack you? What'd your mama pack you?" I'm like, this is a nightmare. Anyways, again, for the sake of time, I'll just say I was there for 3 months.
Right.
And it was a terrible, terrible situation. Those people like mentally break you. And after 3 months, the riot took place, which they talk about in the documentary. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's
All
on
right.
Netflix. It's a trip. And the guy telling the story about the riot, like I remember that guy, the way that he explains the riot, I remember the exact details of it. I didn't know that guy well, but like I remember him and I remember the people he's talking about. And because I was only there for 3 months, a lot of these people were there for like 2 years. And I remember that riot unfolding exactly the same way. So shortly after the riot took place, a few weeks later, I remember like my parents thought they spoke with someone else and they heard that like a couple of kids tried to escape or something. And I wrote them a 10-page letter front and back explaining in detail what happened. They never got that letter.
That's because they used to screen the letters
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
before
Exactly.
they would send it out to your parents, and then they would tell your parents you're manipulating.
Exactly. You're
Right.
manipulating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like my mom would write letters to me like, Matthew, you got to stop trying to manipulate us, honey. And I'm like, like,
Right.
but anyways, I got out of that place finally. And when I got back, that was the first time I was like, truly like, okay, I got to keep my shit together. I'm going to stay sober. My mom was like, the only way you're coming back is if you go to this private school. And it was an Episcopalian school, and so I'm like, okay, fine. I go to that school. Immediately, I went out with my old friends and got drunk one night, and they wanted to get ecstasy for someone else. And we profited an ecstasy pill like through the situation, something like that. But I took
Right.
just a piece of ecstasy and I was like, oh my God, I forgot about this. And boom, I was off to the races. And I corrupted that school. I ended up getting kicked out of that school. and I fell in love with ecstasy, and that's really where it all like started, right? Ecstasy, it was this beautiful chapter of my life where I formed this group of friends and we became like a family, and we would have deep conversations and spent all of our time together, and massages and light shows and like the best sex of my life. It was just, it was like, I used to worry that that was my peak. It was like some of the best days ever. But what ended up happening is the ecstasy stopped working sooner or later, right? I don't know if I burnt out all my serotonin, or it was always the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I needed more and more and more and more. And eventually that chapter ended, and I would spend the next 10 years trying to recreate that chapter, right? Trying to recreate
Right.
that chapter.
Trying to live that moment again.
Yeah, trying to get it back to the freedom that I was experiencing there, but I could never find it again. And so from there on, it was just like, okay, I'll try Coke. I hated Coke. I continuously did Coke, but it gave me anxiety, and I always felt like a fiend, and I didn't like it. And then very quickly after that, I tried meth and got really bad into meth. And then after that, Oxycontin 80s, back when they still made the real 80s, that was probably my strongest addiction ever.
Yeah.
I honestly worry, like, if they started making 80s again, just because of the nostalgia of that time period. But anyways, no, I've come a long way since then.
Snap out of it, bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You feel me?
No, but I'm just saying it's on such a pedestal because it was also only a brief period of time before they stopped making those, the real Oxycontin 80s. And when they stopped making those, what happened? I went to heroin, right? And that would be the beginning of what brought me to my knees, which led to me getting sober. And what that looked like is, as soon as I got into heroin, I think I was 21 the first time I did it. So until I was 26, it was just me continuously, we'd say in AA, trying to arrange the lights to suit myself, in order to manage, right? Trying to manage my life, right? I would move back to LA, back to Texas, back to LA, back to Texas. I would go to Israel and visit my family for a month. I would go get a new job. By the way, at around the age 18, 19, I got my first sales job, and I started to leave that thug stage character behind. And I was like, oh, if only I'm professional and I'm a salesman. And I mean, it was good. Like, I started to change, but it wasn't enough to get me sober, right?
Right.
Because I was never dealing with the internal condition, and I didn't know how to deal with the internal condition, right? I
No, I
tried the
feel you.
self help books, I tried the therapy, I tried all these different things, but none of them were enough until I was 26 years old and I got intervened on. And again, for the sake of time, I'm gonna have to wrap it up in a second. But for the sake of time, I'll say the stars aligned. Right? It was the perfect storm. I was overdosing like constantly. I was terrible at shooting dope, and I was in a place where I was miserable enough to where I wanted help, but I wasn't. My disease wouldn't allow me to ask for help. And even when they intervened on me, like, I knew I wanted help, but I still fought them and was like, I don't need help. I don't need help. Like, I got this. You guys are tripping. But my aunt read me a letter that she wrote. She prepared for the intervention, and she explained that my little cousins, they were my cousins' daughters, who I adore completely. They were worried about me, and they were now including me in their prayers. And their mom, my cousin, I grew up with, she was like a sister to me. She was like my closest cousin growing up, and she had died of a heroin overdose a few years prior, and I was with her the night before. I was supposed to sleep over, but she told me she wasn't feeling well, and
Mm,
I asked if we could hang out tomorrow instead. I
right.
called her the next morning to meet up. Her mom picked up the phone and said she died, Matthew. She's dead, and that like
Your
fucked me.
cousin, right?
Yeah,
The mom. That was the mom of the kids.
exactly.
Right, right.
Exactly. And I'd lost a lot of other people, my best friend in the world, and anyways, so it was a lot. But when I heard that those little girls were worried about me and they were including me in their prayers, I had a split second where my self-centeredness subsided,
Right.
and I was able to see how my actions were like actually affecting these people instead of just being like, leave me alone, like it's my life, like I saw, if I die, which I was like right on the edge, like
I remember,
I was
bro.
about to
I
die,
remember.
and I was like, if I die, this generation is pretty much wiped out. Like, there are some other cousins, but as far as the ones that like all grew up together and like were tight knit, every Christmas, and like it was me and her, And anyways, I was like, I still was like, you want me to go to treatment? I'll go to treatment, But like, I really wanted the help.
But you were trying to make it seem as if like you were doing it for them.
I don't think I was trying to make it seem that way. I think it was more just like we refer in AA we refer to alcoholism as a disease, right? And that creeps up. Like I was saying in the beginning of our discussion, like as a child, I experienced the spiritual malady, right? This irritable, restless discontent. It's like I don't necessarily believe in like the devil, but it's like the devil inside is like, it's got a hold on me. It's got a grip on me. Like if you ever watch the show Intervention and you see these people like being disgusting to their parents, to their families, like
Right.
I've been there. And it's not me, it's not who I am, and I feel sorrow every
It's
time I
like the
act like that.
angry spirit.
Yeah, it's like an angry spirit, right? And it takes complete control, and then afterwards I'm
By
like
the way, have you ever
disgusted.
heard of how they describe spirit? Well, I heard it.
You mean like alcohol, like
No, just
that?
the spirit. Period. It was just,
How, who describes it?
I've read it somewhere. I forgot. So I forgot where I read it, but it said spirit is like an intensified emotion. Period. So like when you like if you're angry, if you're sad, if you're happy, it's that emotion is so intensified. So that's basically what I was like the angry spirit kicked in you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's interesting. Yeah. So what would end up happening, dude? I would go to treatment, and I would be fortunate enough to go to a place that simultaneously introduced me to the 12 steps and took me through the 12 steps while allowing me to participate in like every form of therapy there is. And everything played a part. Everything played a part. But the component that I believe was always missing prior, because I did a shitload of therapy prior, or I was introduced to a lot of therapy. I don't think I fully participated until I had that 12-step foundation, right? That 12-step component. And the way
Right.
that I view the 12 steps is, I know there's a lot of controversy around the 12 steps, and a lot of people are opposed to it, and they're like, "Oh, I don't believe in God. That's a religious program." I'll tell you, I grew up very religiously confused as well, having half my family Christian, half my family Jewish. I identified as agnostic for a while, but the 12 steps isn't religious. It's not religious. That's closed-minded thinking. The 12 steps gives you basically all the best parts of any religion, and gives it to you without religion, without any indoctrination, without any specific belief system, right? It's just, hey, this is a very clear-cut instruction manual for you to learn how to work through all of your resentments, all of your fears, all of your selfishness, learn how to live by principles, learn how to connect to something bigger than you. Not, it doesn't have to be Jesus or Allah or Hashem or whatever it is, just something bigger than you, because when I'm completely dependent upon myself and wrapped up in my own chaos, it's hard for me to get anywhere. It's hard for me to recover, right? Obviously, I've been trying that my whole life and it didn't work. I needed some spiritual component. And if you don't, hey, hats off, power to you. But most of the people that I've witnessed that have forced themselves to quit using drugs or alcohol, but haven't at least added some sort of spiritual component, they're pretty miserable people. They might not be
Right.
using drugs or alcohol, which is great. At least you're alive. But I didn't get sober just to be alive. I got sober to develop a life worth living, right? And to begin to experience some freedom. And that's what happened, man. I became addicted to the freedom, right? So I started exploring every possible way that I could continue to heal, continue to recover, continue to grow spiritually. And now it's been 8 years, Baruch Hashem, thank God. And my life has completely transformed. Miracles have taken place. Two of my best friends that I grew up with in Arlington, Texas, that struggled in addiction with me throughout my life, they were able, I ended up working in the treatment industry. The path led to me coming to work in this industry, right? And the place that I was working at the time was a very altruistic program. The owner yeah, he is an amazing human and helps a lot of people. And we were able to scholarship these two guys for them to come to his program, and they're both sober today. And then one of our best friends that we grew up with, who struggled bad with addiction, is sober today as a result of a 12-step program.
Right.
And look at you and I sitting in these chairs. So it's a beautiful thing, and miracles take place when we get out of our own way and just do the work.
True. True. That's real.
Yeah,
Man, appreciate that story, man.
of course.
That's that journey was definitely it's an ongoing journey, you know what I mean? That's another thing. It never stops. It's a journey that you're gonna always have to go through every day, remind yourself, keep yourself around that community that keeps you accountable as well, right?
Of
And that's
course.
what I feel like you do for me and others and vice versa. So appreciate that, man.